Roland?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. I'm doing pretty good. So, we was talking before the interview started. So tell us a little bit about your career.
Yeah,
What you got going on with Silver?
Sure. I got started in the late 1980s, thanks to the black and white boom of the 80s, which was kind of started by the Turtles. Everyone knows the Turtles. There were a lot of indie books already, but the Turtles kind of made it possible where kind of anyone could jump in and do comics. So thanks to the Turtles, I kind of got in on that independent boom in the late 80s. Which is when Silverline started. Silverline started as a packager, which really means that we used to do freelance editing and agenting kind of. We didn't know it at the time. We were just trying to put stuff together. But looking back on it now, I realized that what we did, we were just freelance editing and agenting. We would put packages together, and then would using our relationships, we would send those to publishers, and then they would publish the books. Mostly Malibu. We did a little bit for Caliber, but mostly Malibu was our big target. And so I wrote a bunch of books. I wrote that's when the Cat and Mouse first appeared. I wrote Miss Fury. I wrote Rocket Ranger. I did a one shot with Lita Ford. If anybody's into heavy metal music, Lita Ford's a headbanger. And then because of that, Malibu hired me to move out to California to be an editor. And when I got out there, then I edited The Protectors, Dinosaurs for Hire, X-Mutants, that whole line of comics. And then the Ultraverse was formed. And a lot of people know the Ultraverse. There's big fan groups on Facebook and stuff. And essentially, the company decided that they had two competing universes. So they shut down the Protectors line and moved me over to the Ultraverse, where I edited roughly half the titles, things like Prototype, Nightman, Strangers, Sludge, Rune. I edited a lot of those. And then Marvel bought the company. So I became a Marvel editor kind of de facto because they purchased Malibu. When Marvel bought the company, then I became line editor. So there was a lot of corporate shuffling and people leaving and stuff like that. And then, of course, Marvel declared bankruptcy and proceeded to fire in the span of 2 days about 400 people. I was one of those. People often ask me if I took it personal. No, I didn't. I was just a number. Did it hurt? Of course it hurt. I mean, I got laid off, but really I got fired, right? And I was doing something that I really enjoyed doing, but I never took it personal. I never said that, oh, they hate me. It's like, no, there's an accountant somewhere going, we need this guy, he's gone, this guy, he's gone. Yeah, So, well, what I did, though, is I took the knowledge that I had gained by being an editor at Malibu and Marvel, and I started my own publishing company. And that's when I called Silverline 2.0. And it was a wrong time to start publishing. It was during the crash, so no books were selling. Everybody was, lots of publishing companies were going under, going out of business. And I lost, $20,000 doing it, which did not make my wife very happy. But from 97 to about 2001, I published about 13 books, and then called it quits. I went back to school. I got a degree, and I started teaching at the university, which is what I still do today for my day job. But a few years ago, I got into doing comics again, and I remembered, this is fun. I love comics. I love the medium. I love the way that comics can tell stories. And so I started doing them again and having a lot of fun. And then about 2 years ago, I relaunched Cat and Mouse. It's volume 2 essentially, which is what I'm still doing. And after we did it, we had some success. We generated some excitement amongst some fans and readers. The team I was working with, Dean, who's the penciler, Barb, who's the inker, Kevin, who was the colorist, they all said, you should start back Silverline again. And I'll tell you, that was not my intention at all when I started doing comics. I just wanted to do comics again. But they kind of kept on me, and they eventually wore me down. Of course, technology has changed a lot since the late 90s when I was publishing comics then. Everything can be done digital now. We can do digital lettering, digital coloring. Even the pencilers and the inkers can do, if they choose to. They can do stuff digitally. So, and the big difference is the print on demand. Silverline works with a fantastic print on demand company, Kablam. They print all of our stuff. When I printed books in the late 1990s, I had a minimum print run of 3,000. So that meant if I was going to go print a book, I had to print 3,000 copies at the bare minimum, right? Mm-hmm. So now, I was selling through Diamond, and so my orders through Diamond were about 800 to 1,200, something like that. So I had 1,500 books I had to store in my garage, which another thing that my wife didn't really like. And I published 13 books, right? So you say 13 times 1,500. Now, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of, and they were all extras at that point in time, because I had to print that many. And I hadn't sold that many. I was, like I said, only selling 800 to 1,000, 1,200, something like that. And I was taking, I had them to take to shows and try to sell, but that's a lot of books to try to move through shows. Well, the big difference now, and of course you had to come up with all the money to do that. Well, the big difference now is that if I run a Kickstarter and I get 200 people to support the book, I can go print exactly 200 copies.
Yep.
And I don't have to worry about, a garage full of thousands of books that may or may not sell, So it's an awesome time that you can take that money and directly invest it into the specific thing you're going to print. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. And I call this latest iteration of Silverline 3.0.
Right. Yeah. Wow. You've had a very interesting career. I think we're interviewing Barb the next week, and that's the final. That's it for Silverline. I think we did.
You did Alex and you did Sid.
Yeah, Alex. Yep.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen those, I'll link those at the end of the video.
That's right. Yeah, and thank you for the Silverline month, by the way. It's been fun. We've been talking about it amongst the group, and of course we've been sharing out the links and everything. Sid had a good time. Alex had fun. So.
Oh yeah, it's definitely been fun getting to know y'all. So those books over your shoulders, is that your personal collection or is that Silverline books?
It's my personal collection. Yes. Yeah.
All right. I was going to ask you before the interview.
So these are this rack over here. These are my DC comics. The rack in the back of my Marvel comics. And when I say that, it's mostly Bronze Age stuff. I started reading when I was a kid, which would have been about 74-ish. And so all of those comprise books from about 74 to about 95, 6, something like that. I really haven't bought any new Marvel or DC comics in 20 years or so. And I probably can't see it. It's probably you might that box right over there. Those are my Silverline comics over there. I've got two racks of those that I take to shows. That's my stock for that.
All right, and so what books do y'all have coming out now with Silverline?
Yeah, so the very next things we're doing, we've got a Kickstarter scheduled for May the 12th, which is going to feature 2 brand new books. One by Barb, who you'll talk to next week, called Divinity. And then the other one is by another industry veteran, Ari Jones. Ari used to write some stuff for me back when I was at Malibu. He wrote The Protectors. He wrote Ferret. He's written Scimitar. In fact, the artist who's doing Ari's book is called Twilight Grim. It's basically a vampire hunter. And his artist working with him is Rob Davis. And Ari and Rob worked together in the 80s doing comics, and most people know the book Scimitar, which is what they worked together. So it's been kind of fun for us to put those two back together. So, and those both are miniseries. There'll be 4-issue miniseries. In fact, Twilight Grim, the last I checked, and don't hold me to the exact number, but Rob's already done about 8 or 10 pages of number 2. So he's jamming right along.
Yeah, and I think they was telling us that she was putting a character from the Kickstarter in the comic book, right?
For Cat and Mouse.
Is it Cat and Mouse? Yeah.
Yeah. So what we did is we added a level. I can't remember exactly what we called it. Is it put you in the comic? And so we had 3 supporters for Cat and Mouse when we did our Kickstarter for number 2. And so they bought in, and their level they had to send us photographs of their faces and stuff like that, right? So so we went through and we picked out different characters. Like one of them is going to be an electronic store clerk. Another one is going to be a fast food clerk, and then another one, our bad guy. And I had to tell him this, but when he did it, I'm like, you got to understand, this is a bad guy. He's like a kiddie porn guy, and he's like, no, I'm good with that. I'm good with that. Make me that. Yeah, I'll be the bad guy. And so they sent us the photo reference, and then when Alex was penciling the book, then he actually used the photo reference and made these people their likenesses into the book. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it went over far. It was just kind of a whim that we thought, hey, what else can we do for the Kickstarter? And yeah, they seem to love that.
That's the first time I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, it's pretty. I'm not saying that no one's ever done it before, but I'm not aware of it either. Not through a Kickstarter anyway.
Yeah, I've never heard of it until Alex was telling me about it. I was like, that's so cool to be immortalized in a comic book forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's see, what are we going to talk about? So, about editing, tell us what the job of an editor does, in case people don't know.
Yeah. So editors often get bad raps in the industry, and sometimes it comes from unhappy fans or disgruntled creators. Often the creators are ones who are very hard to work with or can't meet a deadline, and so they start saying bad things about it, about editors. And admittedly, some editors deserve some of the bad PR that they get. But an editor's job is a corporate editor's job is to protect the mark, right? So if you're the editor of Batman, it's your job to protect Batman, so that a writer doesn't come in and just make all these random, crazy, stupid changes, and then suddenly the character's not recognizable as Batman anymore. So that editor's job that's one of their primary goals, is protect the property, right? Protect the mark. Secondary then is that they've got to make sure they're telling good stories and sales, right? It's all about sales. A lot of folks, like, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Well, what they don't realize is that Marvel and DC particularly, they've got this big corporate machine, and they have tracked things and figured out things, and they try to do things based on sales. Now, we could argue that Marvel and DC don't have that today. They don't have what's going on, but that's a different argument. In independent comics, like one of the things that the Silverline editors try to do is we try to get the best out of each of them. That's the first thing to do. Obviously, the second thing is to kind of keep everything on track and keep it moving forward. It's very hard for sometimes it can be hard for independent creators to move forward because most of them have to maintain a second job, whether they're working as a cashier at Walmart or a security guard or at a fast food joint. Many have to work a job that allows them to come home and then spend extra time on comics. Like I said, for me, my day job is teaching. I have to spend my day job teaching, and then when I'm done with that, I come home and I make comics. But what you want to try to do when an editor's working with a writer, writers are often very attached to their stories, and you don't want to, as the editor, you don't want to go in and change their story, right? Because that's not really what you should do. What an editor has to be able to do is kind of suss out what exactly is the writer trying to do in this scene. What are they? And sometimes you just have to ask them, this scene right here, what's the purpose of the scene? And they'll say, well, I'm trying to do this, and then that gives the editor understanding, and then they can say, instead of doing this, why don't you do this, because it can give you the same thing that you need and do it in a slightly different fashion, right? And so that's really kind of what an editor's job. An editor's job is kind of keep everybody on track and try to get the best possible story and artwork out of the creators as possible without making it theirs.
Okay. Do you ever use comic books? What grade do you teach?
I teach at the university.
Oh, so you teach college?
Yes, yeah.
Do you ever implement comics into your teaching?
I actually teach a comic writing class.
Really?
I do.
Cool. Might have to get some pointers from you.
Yeah, I absolutely love my class. Yeah.
Well, do you have any tips for anybody that's trying to write comic books?
I mean, yeah, and the first thing is you got to remember comics are visual, so you can't write your comic as if it's a prose. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times that one of the worst mistakes you can see in comics is talking heads. Um, on the flip side of that, right, is that you have to remember that your comic book is not a TV show. One of the things one of the comments that I hate to hear as a comic book person is, my students say this a lot, right? They'll come in and say, "Oh, I really enjoyed this book. It felt like I was watching a TV show." My response to them is always, "Well, then that's a terrible comic, right? If it felt like you were watching a TV show, then go watch a TV show. I don't want to watch a TV show when I'm reading a comic. I want to read a comic book. I think it's a very unique, should be a unique experience, and it's a unique storytelling medium. So I think Gabriel Hardman is the guy who was quoted, and I may get his quote a little bit wrong, but he said something like, creators need to remember that comics are not drawn movies. And that's what we have a tendency to see a lot of time, particularly in a lot of modern comics, is that, you might have one page where the character, opens the door and lights a cigarette. What did we accomplish on that page? Nothing, right? And there's lots of panels to do that, and it's like, that's boring. Don't do that. You can do that in one panel. Move the story. So, yeah, that would be my two big pieces of advice.
Okay. Let's see. We got just a couple more minutes. What do you want to talk about?
Say again?
Is there anything that you'd like to talk about? We only got like 4 more minutes.
No, just that what I hope is that people who, your fans who are watching this, will give Kickstarters and Indiegogos an opportunity. I think that there's a big world out there that people are not aware of. People are accustomed to only finding what's available in a comic shop, and which is generally Marvel and DC. Of course, some of the bigger publishers like Dark Horse and Boom and Image and things like that are also there. But there's a whole world of comic books available through Kickstarters, through crowdfunders, through Indiegogo, that if they just they browse through them the same way they would browse a comic rack at their shop. And they would see there's a lot of really good stuff being produced out there that's not making it into the shops.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of good books that it's I think it's good enough to actually be in the stores. The artwork's amazing. Absolutely. But yeah, got to get people out there. So really quick, when you said you worked for Marvel, was it like a 9-to-5 job, like you go into a Marvel building, or did you like work from home and send your stuff there?
Nope, I was an editor, so it was a 9-to-5 job. I went in the morning and spent my day behind a desk, reading and editing and making telephone calls, talking with artists, and making sure that stories were what they were supposed to be, and proofreading, and it was very much a 9-to-5 kind of thing. Plus, the added benefit was that I got to do conventions. As and the company paid for it, so that was always nice.
Well, yeah, because I've always wondered that, was like, if people just work outside of Marvel and send Marvel their stuff, or they actually had a Marvel building and everybody worked. I'd imagine it like a bullpen, like everybody writing comics, and that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely, very much like that. Now the freelancers, a lot of the writers and the artists. I'm not sure about letterers. We had in-house letterers at the time, but a lot of the pencilers and inkers, those are all people who work wherever. Now, when I was there, this was kind of on the very early days of the internet. So most of the artwork that we got in was all FedEx. We'd get these big FedEx packages full of artwork. We'd take that artwork and we would scan it, and then that's how we would then, digitize it for our colorists and everything. Our writers would submit their stories via email usually. The weird thing is that sending in via email, then we'd just go print it out, so that we would have a hard copy of it. Today, and so what that meant is that creators could live anywhere. Today, I mean, it's pretty much everybody. Like, for instance, the Silverline crew. I live in the Orlando, Florida area. Alex, who is the penciler, lives in Texas. Barb, who is the inker, lives in Wisconsin. Kevin, who is the colorist, lives in California. We are literally spread throughout the entire United States.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because we've all got high-speed internet that can do what we need to do.
Right. Well, thank you, Roland. Is there any shout-outs you got? Or
Yeah, well, just for you, I want to shout out you. Thank you so very much for Comicchatauthority and having a Silverline month. It's been a lot of fun. It's been fantastic, and I know that we've still got another week. You get to talk to Barb, but thank you very much. And just shout out to the whole Silverline crew for doing such an awesome job. I know that I'm making some of them, but a lot of them are being done by others, and there's a lot of Silverline is very fortunate right now. We've got a lot of talented folks, some veterans and some rookies hot off the press, hot out of school, doing some really nice work. And I think you and I think a lot of other people are going to be really impressed when you see in the coming months the stuff that's coming out of Silverline.
All right. Well, thank you, Roland.
Thank you.
Thank you.